All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Here's Johnny.
Vanity. Definitely my favorite sin.
I am the devil, and I am here to do the devil's work.
The power of Christ compels you.
This is my boomstick.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Good evening, and welcome to Shiver, a horror movie podcast. We are your hosts.
I'm Daniel LeBona.
And I'm David Ulloa. And we are continuing our month of the water monster. And we started, I think, at maybe the highest point in water monsterdom.
Yeah, we really started this one with a bang, and now looking at what we've got coming up, we're kind of all over the place. But yeah. It's big shoes to fill.
Well, very big shoes to fill. Although Bruce wears no shoes on his fins, but we are talking about the movie Lake Placid. So in a section we're calling "It's Jaws on a Lake." Daniel, the 90s were a really interesting time in horror because like you're coming off of the slasher craze in the 80s, and we're moving into what is, I think, a more sophisticated time in cinema, but also it's the fucking 90s, and it's not. If anything, it's dumber.
Yeah, fair.
But also better in its own way. So what does Lake Placid do for you?
So Lake Placid's an interesting one, especially when you look at where it lays in time, right? So this thing came out in 99. So we're kind of like you said, the slasher craze it went up, it came down. Scream had just started to pull slasher back into the mainstream. So we're looking at that with horror, and Lake Placid, honest to God, just seemed to be David E. Kelly being like, you know what we need? Just a great monster movie, like a fun, eat your popcorn, laugh your ass off, completely unrealistic while simultaneously being very realistic monster movie.
Mhm.
And what we got was Lake Placid. And this movie it does check a lot of boxes, right? It's definitely,
Yeah.
it's water horror. We're right there. It's a monster movie. I've been plain and simple. It follows the Jaws blueprint almost to a T.
Yes.
Right. And then it gives us the humor and the fun. Whereas Jaws was funny in spots, like very specific. Okay, here's a joke, it lands, let's move. This movie is very comedy horror Jaws.
Yeah.
It's this movie is a lot of fun to watch. It's one that has, I mean, it's still got some spots that'll get you, but it's and it takes, like you said, it's Jaws on a lake, right? Like, okay, so now we've been afraid to go out on the beach. We're finally getting over that. What about all these people who don't live near the shore? Right? What about all these people who spend their summers on a pontoon boat getting drunk? Let's make them scared to go in the water. And we get Lake Placid, which is really interesting because during the monster movie craze of earlier decades, these were the ones that always kind of, struck home. It's easy to look at Godzilla and be like, yeah, that's scary, but I mean, that's not real.
Yeah.
But
When's the last time your hometown was struck down by an atomic breath lizard?
Exactly. But you take something like Jaws and you go, oh, well, sharks are real. You take Lake Placid and you go, well, alligators and crocodiles are real. So what if it was just a really fucking huge one and we just had some fun with it? Because ultimately, that's the word that this movie is going to boil down to. This movie is just fun.
I think that you nailed it. This is Jaws if Jaws was slightly more unhinged.
Right.
with infinitely more Betty White. And those are not bad things to try to do, because if you just do Jaws, no one's going to appreciate what you're doing.
Right.
And in fact, I don't think very many people appreciated this movie when it came out.
I don't think so either.
At least not critically. I think that this movie's always kind of had like it's very niche fan base, and the people that love this movie. It's very popular here in Florida. Has nothing to do with Florida, but they do mention Florida Fish and Game. And they make us out to be like the Oklahoma lawmen.
Like goddamn Texas Rangers of shit in the woods.
Which we all know at least one Florida man.
Right.
And it's not wrong, listen, I really like this movie. I had not seen this movie since right around the time that it came out.
Same.
And I don't remember liking it as much as I did this time. What I did remember was thinking these special effects have held up quite well.
They really have.
And I was really surprised by that. Now I feel like I need to go back and rewatch Anaconda. And I haven't seen Anaconda in a long time either. And that I think that's where the giant normal creature that lives out in the world monster movie kind of restarted itself was with Anaconda in 97. This comes out in 99. It's riding that high. And this movie works for me. I don't know yet what it's going to rank, but I do know that I liked it a lot, that I can't wait to watch it again, and that I need more Betty White in my life. That I know, because I go through spurts where I'm like, okay, I'm watching a lot of Golden Girls right now. And then it goes away for a little while, and then I get sad, and I don't remember that that's why I'm sad. So
it's Golden
the world
Girls
needs more Betty White.
Golden Girls withdrawal is very emotional.
It is. It's terrible.
What's funny about this movie and Anaconda is there is a large percentage of sci-fi programming that the channel owes to these two movies, to Anaconda and to Lake Placid. Anaconda and Lake Placid taking off. I say taking off. I mean, this movie was not a bomb. It did make back, what they spent on it and then some. But Anaconda and Lake Placid coming out and making waves, if you will, it really that spawned an entire genre of straight to sci-fi. Yeah. Here's a thing you see, but it's really big and it's terrorizing a town. I mean, that's how we like the Lake Placid to Sharknado pipeline is pretty streamlined.
Yeah,
right. Like
it really is.
It's just right there. And I was actually surprised to find out when I went to find this movie in our family share. I type in Lake Placid and it's like, did you want to buy the 5-movie Lake Placid set? I was like, get the fuck out of here. And so I go and look, and there's actually 6 of them, but for whatever reason, Lake Placid 2 is not available on iTunes. But that also includes Lake Placid versus Anaconda. And they're all
what a crossover.
Yeah, they're all just those exact sci-fi things like Sharktopus and Mega Shark versus Giant Piranha and all of those things that are just a great drunken Saturday night watch. All of those things happen because Anaconda in 97 and Lake Placid in 99 paved that way to be like, people want to watch this.
Yeah, they do.
So, I mean, we've talked about kind of how the movie hits. Let's get into what Lake Placid is all about. So in a section that we're calling When Museums and Law Enforcement Combine, which I love that because it's such a bizarre thing that really only works in a movie.
They're words
like
that should not be put together. Ever.
Correct. So basic story here is giant crocodile in a lake in Maine. We don't know how it got there. Let's see what happens. How does this work for you?
I think that this story works actually really well because every set piece leads naturally into the next one. And I realize I'm saying that about a movie about a 30-foot crocodile. Right. But here's the thing. I'm really sorry for my cat's asshole, which is back here. He has no boundaries, none at all. Here's the thing. I looked it up. And it's actually not, I'm not going to say uncommon, but it's not unheard of for saltwater crocodiles to grow as big as 30 feet.
Wow.
And in fact, the largest that has ever been measured was 33 feet. And it was killed, let's see, Bay of Bengal.
I was about to say, I managed to find something about one that was like 29 and a half. I didn't see the 33. It was called like Lang Lo or something like that. Was 29 and a half feet.
Low long.
Low long. There we go.
Yeah, low long. And it was actually in captivity. That was the largest ever in captivity. Yeah, I started looking this up because, like, growing up, you're very near the swamp, right? Yes. Miami is a swamp. It's a drained swamp, right? The mob did what Trump couldn't. They drained our fucking swamp. But we're not going to get political here. Crocs and not so much crocodiles, but alligators are everywhere, right? Fucking everywhere. And there's big ones, there's little ones, and they're kind of just like part of your day-to-day life. But here's the thing, they're always scary.
Right.
Always scary. And so when you start seeing this movie, if you don't know anything about crocodiles, maybe they don't seem scary. Maybe they just seem like lizards to you. Because I'm pretty sure that just about every ecosystem has its own version of the lizard.
Right.
It's not a lizard at all.
It's a fucking dinosaur.
It's a dinosaur, and that's how the museum gets involved, because they find a tooth in the torso of the first victim of the croc, and it's a dinosaur tooth, or at least that's what they think it is. It's reptilian. That's all they know, and they can't explain a tooth that looks like this. So so Bridget Fonda goes out there because not Stabler, Benson. Agent Benson is having an affair with her boyfriend, right? Totally forgot about that. I remembered Betty White was in this movie. Totally forgot that Mariska Hargitay's in this movie.
Yeah.
Right. And it's been a long time since I've seen Mariska Hargitay that young.
Yes.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow. She's still gorgeous today. But
great gene pool.
Yes, incredible gene pool. Small role, great role, very funny, right? And then this kind of sets up Bridget Fonda being there, and we have then everything just happens naturally. The way everyone gets involved in this, it kind of just spurns from what started, which is I'm cleaning out this beaver dam, tagging beaver, whatever it is. I love that joke. It's fantastic. There is nothing in this, and all the people that get involved here, especially Oliver Platt's character, as ridiculous a character as he is, help explain this movie. And help explain the science behind this movie in the same way that Richard Dreyfuss does in Jaws, but in a totally different way, right? Because Hooper in Jaws is this wholly likable character. There's no way you can't immediately fall in love with Hooper, because he is just a good dude, and he's there to help. He wants to help. But Hector does not want to help here. He's there for himself and himself alone, but he is the Hooper character. He's the guy that's going to provide all of the technology that they're going to use to catch this thing. And then your sheriff, right, played amazingly by Brendan Gleeson,
genius,
is not at all like the sheriff played by Roy Scheider in Jaws. Not at all. Because that is Bill Pullman's character. So you have all of the makings of like what makes Jaws great, but you have it dispersed in different places.
Yeah.
And because of that, it feels familiar, because it's like, oh, I've seen this movie before. But if you've seen Piranha, you've also seen this movie before, because it takes itself as seriously as Piranha does, except when it needs to get mean and it needs to get brutal. And then it doesn't pull punches. This movie, I found myself wincing a couple of times.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, this movie punches hard. When it does, it punches hard. And there's certain scenes, like the scene where Hector is looking right at the croc.
Yeah.
Man, what a scene. That is tension. That's tension right there. So don't think that this movie is just like a stupid comedy horror, because you can do comedy horror and still make it horror. And there's plenty of examples of that we've covered, but the first one that always comes to mind is Return of the Living Dead. That movie punches hard. It makes you laugh just as hard.
Yeah, I love what you talked about, which is how, as kind of silly as it seems on the surface, which is just people hunting a giant crocodile, as you're watching, it never feels like any of it's forced. It does feel like this is how people would react. It feels like the woman who works for the museum, she's gonna want to see this. She's been studying dinosaurs and all of this, and now she has a chance to maybe see one. And so she's going to want to be a part of it, even though she has no idea. She has no idea what's going on. You've got your sheriff and your fishing game, man, who want to just figure out what this is and get rid of it. They're looking at the ecosystem, right? They refer to crocodiles as a keystone ecosystem member, where they affect everything. It's trickle down economics in the wild, right? And so
it's a good way of explaining it.
30-foot crocodile is the Ronald Reagan shitting on everyone below him. And so they're all very interested in watching how this is going to go. So even as kind of crazy as some of the stuff plays out, we meet Betty White and she's like, "Oh yeah, I feed him. I love him. That's my boy." Right? It's like, on the one hand, is that kind of weird? Yes. On the other hand, did I grow up with a grandfather who threw catfish guts directly into the lake off of his property so that every morning there were alligators in the yard? Yes. Yes, I did. Every single morning when I would wake up, my grandfather lived at the lake. You could go on the porch and there'd be a couple alligators in his yard, because every day when he would go fishing, he cleaned them on his dock and just threw the guts right there in the water. They were used to getting fed. So they weren't 30 feet long, but you could, they were alligators though. You could just go and be like, "Y'all get out of here," and they'd take off. That's all it takes to get rid of an alligator. They don't give a shit. But all of this felt real. It felt like the way people would really react when they hit the water, and you've got the one guy, you've got Hector trying to be like, "No, don't move. That's going to attract it." But they're panicking because they're in the water where they have seen there's something that bit someone in half. Again, right back to the Jaws things. Our very first body is only half a body, but all of it felt like the right progression. There was never a moment where there was just some sort of leap in logic as to what they would do next.
Or like, where did that come from? How did we end up here? How did you get that idea? Like, there was never that.
Exactly. It makes sense that the guy who's obsessed with crocodiles would want to see the biggest one that he's ever encountered or heard of kept alive. It makes sense that the guys around would kind of be like, I mean, maybe it is the right call, right? Fishing game. They're into stuff like that. Like, this is a phenomenon. We want to be a part of this. So all of those things made sense. The other thing about this is one of the other things you said, which is, man, when this thing gets rough, it gets brutal. This, I feel like, is a wonderfully, wildly accurate representation of what it would look like if a 30-foot crocodile were dominating an area like this. When we see it eat the entire cow, and it gives it the full like crocodile roll, like all of that stuff feels like, yeah, it's just a crocodile, but it's really big. And that stuff is all great. And yeah, I jumped a couple times because I'm right there with you. I don't think I've seen this since right around when it came out. So 20 years later here, this thing was basically new to me. And yeah, some of the jump scares got me. There were some really good moments. I also think that you're right in the fact that I don't think I appreciated this as much as I should have when I was like 17 when it first came out. I was 16 when it came out, like 16, 17 when I first saw it. And now watching it through 41-year-old eyes, I'm like, this is a fun movie. And yeah, I don't know where I'm going to rank it yet. We'll get to that. But everything they gave me here was a good time, and I'm okay with that.
And truthfully, I think if you're having a good time, that is the best that you could hope for when it comes to movies, and particularly horror movies, because horror movies that are overly mean are not fun to watch.
Yes.
They can be good. They can be really good, but they're not necessarily fun to watch.
Right. They're the ones that you're like, I've seen that. It was good. I'll never watch it again.
Exactly. Yeah. And so like that it's fun, that's a huge win, I think. But let's not dwell too much on the story, because we've got a lot of people to talk about here.
We do.
So in a section that we're calling scientists, officers, and rangers, Daniel, who jumps out at you as like, I've got to talk about this person?
Here's the thing with this one, man. I'm glad that we did go ahead and get into this, because narrowing this one down to just talking about a couple, like, we're just going to have to hit this cast because everybody plays their role wonderfully. I am going to start off with the gentleman who, if you have been a fan of Dave and I for a long time, a while back when we did Rush 4 and we did the Mount Rushmore of Irish actors, this is a guy that we talked about a lot because he is a genius. That's Brendan Gleeson, man.
Oh yeah.
Brendan Gleeson don't miss. He always brings exactly the right level of intensity, comedy, and just joy to a film. And in this one, we get this really smart ass, real dry version of Brendan Gleeson, where everything is delivered with sniper like accuracy. If he is going to cut someone down and he wants them to feel it, you know that. If he's cutting someone down because he's busting their balls, you know it. And you know the difference, even though on the surface, if you were just watching him deliver the lines, they're delivered like exactly the same. He's so good at all of that. And the way that he just interacts with everyone in this movie, though, the way that him and Pullman, they're kind of back and forth and it's a colleague thing, and he doesn't understand at all why Fonda wants in on this. Like, he can't wrap his head around it at all. The fact that he's just got like the one giant gun that he's never fired, but he's so fucking excited to have a reason to maybe fire it, He delivers everything in a way that I found myself laughing so much, but I was just laughing right there with him. Like, I was supposed to be laughing when I was, and I appreciated that.
The thing with him is that I think my enjoyment of him and his performance is tied directly to Oliver Platt. Yeah. And I know that I would have enjoyed his performance had it been opposite another actor, because that very first scene, he fucking kills it.
So good.
It is so damn good. Was that sarcasm? I know what you guys think of, of police officers, and every line is delivered with wit. Which,
what does he say? Feels like one of those things I don't have to say. Yeah, but you said it, so.
Yeah, I think Mark Twain said that. Well,
yeah,
you said it. Well, you said it, so that covers it.
Yeah, there we go. That's it.
Yeah, man, he plays off of Platt so well, and to see him be the one who like comes to the rescue for this guy that he absolutely hates is, I think, so telling to the kind of person that he is, because he really does have his heart in the right place, I think. Easily irritated, Yes. The kind of police officer I want to come across? No, definitely not. But the kind of guy that I would feel protected by,
Right.
100%. And I feel like that's really in line with a lot of Brendan Gleeson's characters. And it's awesome when a guy with these acting chops comes into a movie like this and gives it the same amount of energy that he would any other movie.
Yeah.
Because this very easily could have been something like Braveheart. Because he's spectacular in Braveheart, right? And that's a real movie.
Right.
That's not a silly little comedy horror, but he brings that gravitas to it.
Yeah, I mean, he cracked me up the whole time, while also he also served as like an emotional core to this thing. He's the guy that there seems to be the most depth to. Like everybody else has their thing, right? Like you're the scientist, you're the crocodile guy, you're the fish and game guy. He was the guy who was the most well-rounded and brought a lot to his character.
And the one who was most local, because Pullman's character is from Maine, but I don't know that he's necessarily like friends with this group of people. Like Gleason knows people in this area.
Yes.
So that is something else that he brings. Shifting gears, I have to talk about her first. Betty White is she's always perfect in everything, but she's
Mary Poppins.
Perfect. She is. She's practically perfect in every way. So when she plays the dumb, unassuming old lady, right? I mean, she's basically playing herself from Golden Girls in that first scene. It's amazingly contrasted when they come back, and then we see the real her.
You're cocksuckers.
Yes. I knew it when I first met you.
Yeah.
But I didn't say it.
Yeah. No, when they first meet her and she's telling that whole story about her deceased husband, and then she's finally like, in a moment of clarity, he finally asked me to end it. So I hit him in the head with a skillet. You can dig him up. He's in the backyard. If you don't believe me, it was like, this is stunningly stoic, like for this story.
Yeah, and she is number one of the funniest people that has ever lived. Like just looking at her face makes me laugh. But also she's a really good actress, and I don't think that she gets enough credit for her acting ability, because this is something that if she's ever given a role big enough, because she had a lot of like small roles that people remember her for, but this is a pretty big role. I mean, it's not top billing,
right?
But I would say she is the most important character in this movie. We actually get enough of her to see her character develop,
right?
And to see that she is multi-dimensional, multifaceted, that it's not just I'm playing this like kooky older woman, that there is something here, and that like I will call you a cocksucker because that's the kind of old lady that I am, but I'm also going to sit here and I'm going to drink my tea.
I love the moment at the end after Oliver Platt gets attacked by the second one, and they shoot it and blow it up, and everything's kind of settling down. And they're like, "Did Bickerman know about the other one?" They're like, "Oh yeah, she didn't tell us because she was afraid we might shoot it." And then it's just like the camera just like cuts to Brendan Gleeson. He's like, you know,
so good.
Yeah, she's stellar in it, and I really did enjoy it. It's funny because I went through like a moment where I was like, man, why is everybody so obsessed with her? You know, because there was a moment, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago or so, where it was just like everybody was always talking about Betty White, and I kind of did get a little dragged down. Now she, you know, it's settled down, and so now going back and revisiting, I'm like, okay, you know, all the praise was deserved. And so I did enjoy seeing her in this. I did remember she was in it, but I had forgotten how like crucial she was to everything that happened. So I really enjoyed seeing her. Other side of that coin is, oh my God, Bridget Fonda's character is insufferable in this movie. Like she drives me
she kind of is.
insane.
I think there's a charm to her though.
Is there though?
Okay, so I don't know. It's very possible that there isn't, because there's certain people where I say that about, and then people turn around and look at me like, "What the fuck?" On? Like, no, there is no redeeming quality. I say that about Gwyneth Paltrow, and people are like, "No, man, no, there's no redeeming her."
Right. I mean, and she just, and I get that, you know, the way they set her character up, her character is set up from the very beginning to just rightfully be in a shitty mood for the entire movie. You know, boyfriend just broke up with me. Oh, he broke up with me because somebody that I know he's been cheating on me with, and now they're together. Oh, and he's my boss, so it's not like I don't get to see him every day.
Right.
And he just sent me to fucking Maine to track down maybe a dinosaur. This whole thing is so weird. I get it. Right. And I do love, though, that the fact that she's insufferable is vital to her interactions with everyone else.
Right.
The way that she interacts with Gleason and with Pullman, her being insufferable is key to the way that they all treat each other. And so I get it. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, she's insufferable, but it's important to her character that she be insufferable. Like, it's not like I hate her. It's important that she be like this because we need that character to keep things moving forward.
I agree. And movies do need characters like that. Or not movies specifically, but stories need that conflict between characters, because if everyone is getting along, that's not interesting. You
Right.
need to have something that's going to get in the way. You look at a movie like American Pie, and like, you need that conflict to make the interactions between the characters interesting. Because
Right.
if they're not all trying to get laid and, you know, kind of stepping on each other's toes trying to make that happen, then what the fuck am I doing here? Like, why am I watching a bunch of people get along? You know,
Right.
You need to have that conflict, and she provides that conflict really, really well. And I don't know if it's something in her genetics, because I feel like her family often plays characters like that.
Right.
Right. Where it's like, you bring the drama, right? You are the drama. And I think she does it really, really well. But I also think that there are lots of redeeming qualities to her, which end up making her, maybe this is why I say that she's got a charm to her. Ultimately, I end up liking her because she is going to try to do something.
Yeah.
She's not going to allow herself to be like backseat driver. She's going to get in the driver's seat, and she's going to do something about it, because she just went through something. And we don't know how long she dated Arkin's character.
Yeah.
We don't know how serious that relationship was, but it seemed to have been a breaking point for her, where just like nothing in her life seems to go the way that she wants. And now she's like, no, I'm in control right now. Right. And I'm going to make the decisions. And she kind of does. She kind of does dictate the way that everything goes here, because number one, she is smarter than everyone else.
Right.
Including Hector, because Hector might have more raw talent than she does, but he's also insane.
Certifiably.
Yeah. And she's got her own things too, because she's a little nuts, but she's got it all in check, and she knows we have to do this to get to the next thing, and ends up in my opinion, right there with Bill Pullman, seeming the most human in this, because part of being human is making mistakes, and part of being human is occasionally being unlikable. Like sometimes we have to do things where, like, I even look at myself and I'm like, did I really just become that guy? Really? I'm that guy now. And and then at the end of the day, I look at myself, I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm that guy. You want to know why? Because I'm a fucking adult. And sometimes you got to do that. So I do like her character ultimately, I think.
Yeah, and like I said, I see the necessity of it. I absolutely do, and I see where she drove so much of what happened. But man, just at the beginning, it's like, oh gosh, she's on one.
Okay, so I'm gonna talk. Man, I'm in between. Okay, now I'm gonna go with it. Bill Pullman as Jack. Literally every Bill Pullman movie I've ever seen, I love him in.
Right.
And he is not a one-trick pony. It's very easy to think of Bill Pullman as Lone Star all the time. because the role is ubiquitous. But I think that he's got some range on him, because when you start looking at his, like, the range of movies that he's got here, right? And there's like a lot of variation in what you see.
Well, and
like,
this is only what, 2 or 3 years removed from him playing the president in Independence Day, right?
Yes, like that, and that is nothing like this. It's nothing like Lone Star, a movie that you were probably like too old for, like just a hair too old for when it came out. But I fucking loved it because I loved the cartoons. Casper.
I mean, I know he's the dad in Casper. I've seen it, but it's not one I've like watched on a regular I think I've seen it once.
He approached it. Yeah, I mean, you were probably not the target audience. I was the target audience at that point, right? Because you're what, 4 years older than I am, 5 years older, something like that.
I just turned 41 last.
Okay, there you go. I'm 37. So that, like, he plays, I think, such a good dad in that movie. Like, and the movie's ridiculous, right? It's very slapstick, but he doesn't play it slapsticky. He plays it like a father that's trying to be there for his daughter and to make all the right decisions for her when they're grieving over the loss of his wife, her mother. So I think that when he approaches roles, like, he really does kind of approach each role as its own thing. And then you contrast all of this with, like, one of the movies that we fucking love on this show, with The Serpent and the Rainbow.
Right.
And he can act, and he brings, I think, some real gravitas to this role, where you sometimes wonder, like, is this guy really like fish and game? Because, like, he should be a conservationist, but, like, he's all for just killing this thing, but then, like, he really knows about, like, keystone species, and, like, this thing is not supposed to be here. It's invasive. We got to get it out of here. Like, he comes off ultimately, I think, as one of the more well-rounded people, because he really knows what he's doing. And and so complex a character that I don't know at the end of this movie whether he was going to blow the crocodile up, or he was going to shoot it with a tranquilizer.
Yeah, I mean, he did a really good job with that, and you're right. It's that real. It's not like it's not super serious all the time. It's just he's always so mellow, but he makes it work for whatever he's doing. You know, Lone Star, all the jokes are just real. They're delivered real flatly, and it takes you a second for him to hit, right? You know, when he's the president in Independence Day, everything is just kind of real chill as much as he can be until he can't anymore. And that's what he brings here. He is the level-headed one through all of this. He's the guy who keeps all of the extremes of, you know, guy who's just obsessed with crocodiles, guy who just wants his town to be safe, you know, girl who just is trying to figure out what's going on. He's the one who just keeps everyone on the straight and narrow. He's the reason, as much as as much as Fonda's character is the reason that Kelly Scott, as much as Kelly is the reason that we get the science and we learn how this is possible, he's the one who keeps it from going too far in any of the directions. This could have become real goofy monster movie like all those sci-fi movies that spun out from it if he had not been there to ground this thing. Because if this had just been town goes crazy and wants to kill it, that's a very different movie. If it had just been two crazy scientists want to hug it and take it home, that's also a very different movie. Keeping him there in the middle, he serves as like I said, he's the constant in all of this. He keeps this movie working. And that is something that you end up coming back to in so many of his roles. And it is interesting now to go back and see how often he did those things when he pops up in these movies. Like you talked about when we did Serpent in the Rainbow. It's like, you got some friends that you play like Paxton or Pullman with. You ever play that game where it's like, it's like you name a movie. It's like, I know it's got one of those guys in it. Who's got Paxton? Who's got Pullman? Like you think about those games because he's done so much, but then you go back and you're like, but this dude really can act his ass off. There's a reason he's in so many movies. And so I really did enjoy him here. And so from the core of this movie of keeping everything sane, let's go to the deep end of the pool. And let's talk Oliver Platt as Hector Sear. Oliver Platt is a genius in just everything he ever does. And this is a guy who does the opposite of what Pullman does. Whereas Pullman takes every character and grounds it and makes it something that you just like you're in on, and it's all flat. Oliver Platt takes a role and then he's like, all right, thanks for the idea. I'll take it from here. And then he just goes. and it becomes totally and wholly his character. And Hector Sear is so fucking great. From that second that he lands his pontoon helicopter, just right there in the middle of it, he gets out in his safari shirt with his chest out and everything, and is immediately talking about crocodiles were worshipped by every major religion, and I've they've let me live, and I swim with them, and I kiss them, and whatever else. He's so off the deep end, but there's something about the way that Platt does it to where he never seems crazy. He seems obsessed.
Yeah.
And he seems fascinated. And he seems like last week with Jaws, I was talking about, we get Dreyfuss plays this guy who's like, yeah, if you have enough money, you can grow up and just turn something you're obsessed with as a kid into a career. That's what he gives us here. And he gives us this wide-eyed wonderment, but also being so knowledgeable about how they are. But man, that fucking scene where he's in the water and it's coming right at him.
What a scene.
And he stares it down and survives. And then he gives the speech afterwards. And he's like, I didn't want it to kill me. I wanted it to judge me. That's why this is so important. Like, that scene right there carries as much weight as the entire movie. When suddenly this entire caricature of a scientist that he has been presenting becomes this very, very emotional and deep man. It's incredible. And that one moment takes his character to a very, very different and a whole nother level.
Yeah. And I think it starts because he mentions earlier, I looked them in the eye and I know. And when he finally looks it in the eye and he says, oh, you're not like the others.
Yeah.
There's that moment where it's like, he's going to die here. He's going to die. I know he's going to die. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I know he's going to die. So when he survives that scene, there was like excitement in me because I didn't remember whether he survived or not. I remembered nothing about this movie.
I was right there.
Betty White was in it. I remembered Betty White and the giant crocodile. Like, that is it. I think that this is such a complex character Like it's really difficult to say that he's just the crazy guy, or he's just the eccentric, or he's just this, or he's just that, because I think that scene that you just described is one of two scenes that give you like the two sides of the coin that's Hector Sear. The other is when they're out on they're out on the canoes, and he's talking about how he and Kelly had sex once, and she says, no, we didn't. And then he turns to Officer Keogh, or Sheriff Keogh, and he goes, they never remember. I'm an awful lay.
I'm an awful lay. Yes.
That, like, he takes himself entirely too seriously and not seriously enough, all at the same time. And that's a really difficult set of parameters to play with when that's how your character's written. And I think that, like, I can't imagine anyone else doing this. I really can't.
Yeah, no, he was great. So just all cards on the table here. My laptop battery is not being friendly to us, so we are going to keep moving, and we are going to get into the one more character that we haven't got to. And in a section that we're going to call It Came from the Deep Throughout the Month, we've got to talk about this unnamed 30-foot crocodile and what it brings to this movie, and kind of where it stands in this pantheon of water monsters that we're going to be talking. So, I mean, what do you think?
Listen, this crocodile is amazing. He's awesome. It looks fantastic, and that's due to the fact that Stan Winston was in charge of the special effects here. And I think that, thank God that we had a movie like Jurassic Park come out a couple of years before this, where Stan Winston knew how to kind of mesh animatronic and CGI and mesh these things into something that works. Right. And it is, I'm not going to say seamless, because at the end of the movie, like, you can definitely tell it's a CGI crocodile that's coming out there. But it's pretty damn close to seamless. And I would put this movie on for anyone, especially a young person today, and challenge them to say that it doesn't look good.
Right. Yeah, I mean, last week when we talked Bruce, I said he was the prototype, the blueprint, and this is proof of that. So here we are, 20 years later, right? And we're still getting a monster in the water that is so scary because of how little we see it, because of how much damage and how much terror it hands out before we ever see the thing. That is why we talked about Bruce the way that we did. And this crocodile follows that. We know he's there. We know he's huge. We've heard the science. We've got the numbers. We've seen the splashes. We know he upsets entire schools of fish, white perch specifically. Yeah. But we don't see him very much until we do, and then it's badass. There is so much build to what this thing is finally gonna look like when we get to see it, that and then when you do, you're in awe. And then, like you said, the special effects are so good that you're not disappointed. They sell the idea of the crocodile for so long, and they sell it so hard. That was quite a hill to climb when you do finally reveal, and they knocked it out, man. This croc is badass. And I love that they balance how monstrous it is with how silly it is that it finally gets caught because it gets wedged inside a helicopter.
Yeah.
You know, like and that is where they looked at Jaws and went, okay, well, they blew it up. What if we go the complete opposite way? and we do something goofy, and it's charging, and it goes to get him, and it gets stuck in a helicopter. And so then during the credits, we get the scene of the massive crocodile on a flatbed getting taken away to live its life. And I don't know, he said something about like an oil tanker or something where he's going to keep it.
Yeah.
And so I love that they followed that Jaws idea so closely, but it didn't feel, it felt homage, not rip off, right? Which is a fine line. When you stick that closely to an idea, you have to work really hard to make sure that you're staking your claim for what yours is and not just ripping off what was already there. They did that really well. And I think that now, really, like you said, I remembered there was a huge crocodile. Hell, I'm lying. I thought it was a huge alligator. When I went to watch this, when I first fired it up, I was like, yeah, it's about a huge alligator. And then they're talking about crocodiles. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. They eat people. And so, but that is how little I remembered about it. And so then I was all the way back in with like pins and needles, wondering what I was going to see when this thing finally revealed, and was not let down. I loved it. I think that this is one that more people should go back and watch with a fresh set of eyes, and then remember fondly what this movie was.
I'm right there with you, because there's I can't think of anything in this movie that I disliked, to be honest. I know it's not perfect because it's the kind of movie where you're watching and you're like, oh man, this is so much fun. I wish I had something that might be able to alter my state right now.
Yeah. This is one of those movies that does make me go, yeah, there was a time when I would have enjoyed this that much more.
Just a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think that that's okay. And a big part of that is the fact that this is a mean, scary monster. The reveal, the reveal when he takes down that bear. What the fuck? Because that comes out of nowhere. Because I'm thinking like, oh shit, the next kill is gonna be a fucking bar, right?
Yeah.
And no, it's not. Man, I gotta tell you, I want to see the second one. I've never seen any other Lake Placid movie.
Yeah, like I said, apparently
I watch the second one.
I don't know if the second one's streaming anywhere, but the third,
I think it's on Peacock.
Okay, maybe that. Yeah, there we go. Because from looking it up, it seemed like that one was made for TV, and for some reason, like Apple didn't have that one, but then they had a bunch of others, and then they get that weird Jason X like film quality drop off, right? Where it's like this was shot with a handy cam, So.
Oh boy, those were the days. All right, so to beat DeBona's computer from dying, we're gonna jump right into the ratings, right? So, Daniel, out of a possible 5 Betty White toes, how many Betty White toes do you give this? Keeping in mind, Betty White has 10 toes in this movie.
She does have 10 toes in the movie, so there are 10 in the movie. Obviously, we're not going to go there. Like you said, this movie is not perfect. It is flawed in just some silly ways. Nothing that's worth shitting on it about. Nothing that's worth dragging through the mud. I mean, we've sat here and we've enjoyed it, but it's not perfect. But it is a perfectly fun movie. This is one of those ones that I always go back to this analogy. This is one of those ones you throw on in the background when you're having a party and people want to watch something that's occasionally going to catch their attention, but you don't have to pay that much attention to. I don't think that any of its flaws are worth Dame Betty White losing more than a whole toe. So I'm going to go 4 out of 5 Betty White toes on this one because I did thoroughly enjoy watching it again last night.
I am right there with you. I was between 3.5 and 4. When I said I don't know what I'm going to give this, I knew I would never go as low as 3. I knew that I couldn't go as high as 4.5. So I would be somewhere in that 3.5 to 4 world. And the more we talked about it, the more I was like, man, I feel like 3.5 is just too low.
Right.
And I don't know why. I don't know why it's too low, because I couldn't tell you what it is that I won't give this a perfect score for. All I know is that I think when this episode's over, I'm going to watch it again.
Right. Exactly.
It's weird. It's weird, but I like it. I like it a lot. I like it almost as much as Betty White likes those little baby crocodiles at the end.
The little baby ones at the end. So there you have it. A unanimous 4 out of 5 Betty White toes for Lake Placid. And we're going to continue rolling with It Came from the Deep month. If you were paying close attention throughout this episode, we did mention what next week's movie is going to be. So I'll let you go back and try to figure it out instead of just getting it to you. I am getting a low battery warning, so I'm just going to tell you to head to shiverpod.com. You'll find all our social media there. Hit us up. Instagram is coming back. I've been very busy with the beginning of school. Feet are under me. We'll be back daily posting starting tomorrow.
Absolutely. So on behalf of all of us here at Shiver, fright you very much.